if you supported millions of people gathering in the streets to protest amidst a pandemic, then you have absolutely no right to complain about rising case numbers, because it is your fault. You are the reason case numbers are rising. There is no bigger violation of CDC guidelines than millions of people gathering in the streets amidst a pandemic in tightly packed crowds, passing around megaphones, yelling and screaming. You can't think of a bigger violation of CDC guidelines. If the CDC guidelines put restrictions on size of gatherings and proximity, right? We have to limit the size of gatherings and we have to be at proximity 6 feet away or more. The protests are literally the polar opposite of that. If you want to make a strong, valiant effort to violate the CDC guidelines to the best of your ability, what you would do is the protests. You would have tightly packed crowds with absolutely no social distancing, and you would have crowds of seemingly limitless sizes, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people packed into a crowd. And then you would do this day after day after day, week after week. You would yell and scream and pass around your megaphones. It would be a COVID party, just passing COVID everywhere. If COVID is any bit as contagious as they say it is, then these protests have spread COVID like crazy. There's no way you can have a disease that is highly contagious and you have tightly packed crowds of hundreds of thousands of people meeting day after day, week after week, and then not have COVID. We know that is the number one culprit for the rise in cases. And now people are complaining like, oh my God, I can't believe COVID cases are on the rise. We need to shut down the country. Really? How about we shut down the protests? If you were worried about case numbers rising, but then also support hundreds of thousands of people to go out and protest, then you are a hypocrite. The number one contributing factor to the rise in cases are the protests. There is no reasonable argument against that. It is the greatest violation of CDC guidelines. And if you're mad at Donald Trump saying, look, he needs to do something about the rising case numbers. Really? Well, if you think that he should do something about the rising case numbers, he should probably start with the protests, right? We're amidst a pandemic. Of course, in this country, we do have we do have rights to form assemblies and protest, but we're amidst a pandemic. What happened to that? Shouldn't we prioritize our health and safety of the community? No. According to many, no, we shouldn't. We're going to violate the CDC guidelines in the strongest way possible and then say, oh my God, all Donald Trump's fault for the rise in case numbers. When you have millions of people forming tightly packed crowds, passing COVID all over the country. And then you see what happened in New York City. Truly disgusting. Mayor Bill de Blasio, just transparently corrupt right in front of our eyes. So the testing centers are not allowed to ask patients if they were at protest. What kind of corrupt bullshit is that? For contact tracing, they're trying to identify when and where people got coronavirus. How are you supposed to do your job when there's a restriction on the questions you can ask? You can't ask if people were at certain places. How transparently corrupt is that? You can't ask someone if they're at the protests? Why? Is this just a sacred land? Is that sacred territory? It's absolute bullshit. They're trying to hide the fact that the protests are the obvious culprit of a spike in cases. But on a lighter note, we do have a little bit of good news. Coronavirus deaths are down 96%. And I made an entire video on speculating why I think that is. I have linked it in the description below. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please share this video, like this video, comment on this video, and I will see you all next time.